don't know what your name is anymore because you keep changing it.
Yeah, PhantomBurro. So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Then why are you tSelections on Discord?
that's my gamer name.
Yeah, right. Let me get. All right. So today is a weekend because these kind of alternate between Saturday and Sunday. So today is the stream about Stoicism and my unfortunately messy hair because I did not care to do anything with it this week. So we finished up the Enchiridion, which is translated as the handbook or manual, which also literally means handbook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into the selections in this book, How to Be Free, which uses who translated this?
I forgot his name.
It's not Robin Hart. It's A.A. Long.
Yeah.
A.A. Long. So he translated in this book 9 sections from the Discourses, I believe the first 9. And so we will be going through that.
Well, he said it's 9 excerpts from 3 of the 4 books. So
yeah. Oops.
So it's kind of broad.
He just numbered them 1 through 9 in this, which confused me because I've gotten so used to reading the Discourses. So, yeah. So this should give us a pretty good idea of, some longer form content that Epictetus talks about.
Right.
Bam! Do you want to read this introductory part or do you want to skip it?
I was thinking about skipping it unless you think it's important.
I don't really care.
All right.
What is this?
This one is called Learning to Desire Each Thing as It Happens.
I think we read this recently, actually.
Yeah. We'll read it again.
Oh, you're going to read it? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
All right, I guess so.
All right. The person who is getting an education ought to approach this process with the following aim. How can I follow the gods in everything? How can I be content with a divine administration? And how can I become free? Well, you are free if nothing happens that conflicts with your will, and if no one is able to obstruct you. What does that mean? Are you telling me that freedom is madness? No, of course not. Freedom and madness don't go together. But I want my every wish to come to pass, however crazy that may seem. You really are mad. You are raving. Don't you know that freedom is something fine and wonderful? To be so happy-go-lucky in one's wishes as to want every whim fulfilled is tantamount to being the reverse of fine, utterly shameful, in fact. Think how you proceed in the case of the alphabet. Do I want to write the name Dio in whatever way I like? No. I am taught to like it the way it should be written. How is it in music? Just the same, and so it is quite generally wherever some skill or expertise is involved. Otherwise, if knowledge were adjusted to everyone's individual whims, there would be no point in learning anything. Is it only here, then, in the case of the greatest and most important thing, freedom, that I am allowed to be happy-go-lucky in my wishes? Not here, least of all, because education is precisely learning to want all individual things to happen just as they do. And how do they happen? In the way that the one who has arranged them has arranged. He has arranged for there to be summer and winter, plenty and dearth, virtue and vice, and all such opposites on behalf of the harmony of the universe. And he has given each of us a body and bodily parts and property and fellow human beings. Mindful thereafter of this arrangement, we should proceed to education not in order to change the conditions, for this is not granted to us, nor would it be better, but in order that, with things about us as they are and as their nature is, we may keep our minds in harmony with what happens. Tell me then, is it possible to escape from people? How could that happen? But is it possible to change them by being in their company? Who gives us that option? What else is there then, and what resource can we find for dealing with them? The sort of resource whereby they will do what seems good to them, but we shall just as surely be in harmony with nature. Yet you are unhappy and discontented. If you are alone, you call it isolation. But if you are in company, you call people schemers and robbers. You even find fault with your parents and children and brothers and neighbors, but when you are alone, you should call it peace and freedom and liken yourself to the gods. And when you are in a group, you should not call it a crowd and a mob and an unpleasantness, but a party and a festival, and so accept everything cheerfully. What then is the punishment for those who don't accept? To be just as they are. A man doesn't like being alone. Let him be in isolation. He doesn't like his parents. Let him be a bad son and moan. He doesn't like his children. Let him be a bad father. Throw him in jail. What jail? You mean where he is now? For he is there against his will, and wherever someone is against his will, there he is in jail. That's how Socrates was not in jail, because he was there willingly.
So there's a lot to this. First of all, I kind of want to say that this translation is so much easier to read.
Yeah.
It's much more easy to read than
the one we've been reading from Robin Hard?
Yeah, it's the Robin Hard translation. So I don't want to bag on Robin Hard because Robin Hard has on occasion contributed to modern Stoicism things.
Yeah.
But there are certain parts where he tries to make, or I don't know if it's a dude or a lady, but where Robin Hard tries to make it readable, and then there are other passages where they seem to want it to be super scholarly sounding, which gets on my nerves that it vacillates back and forth between trying to be approachable and trying to be academic. A.A. Long, from what I've read of what dude has written, usually, unless it's targeted toward an academic audience, tries to make everything as readable as possible. And you can see here that he's arranged sentences so that they use modern syntax instead of cutting up sentences and doing weird clause flips and things that are present in older languages but not so much in English anymore.
Right.
So if there is a full translation of the Discourses by A.A. Long that uses where this comes from, somebody tell me, because I want to read that. Because, man, my head hurts sometimes. Some days after we finish, I'm just like,
Right.
All right. Not that I don't understand it. It's just, man.
Right. I'm
just like, why did you do that? When you could have not and made it more readable. So there's a couple things in here. We've all known people who, no matter how you try to reframe things for them in a more productive way, they're like, oh no, but this is crap. Oh, this is so difficult. You don't understand.
Yeah.
And dude, it happens even when they know for a fact from firsthand experience that you've been through something extremely similar. And they were like, oh, you're just stronger than me or whatever. You're just better at handling things. And they don't want to look at things differently. So this passage that's up right now is kind of breaking that down. Just let them be whatever they are. If they don't want the help, it's okay to be well, just let that be the case.
Yeah, you can't help everyone. For example, a recent example of this, one of my coworkers, I wasn't even part of the conversation. It was just, eavesdropping. Well, not even eavesdropping. It was just...
We were just around.
There were just people around. She just, said stuff. But she was like, oh, man, because I guess she was supposed to go to Vegas, and she was like, man, I don't want to take an airplane over there because, afraid of flying, and also, the COVID thing, which I get. But then, at the same time, she was like, but I don't want to like drive there either because I don't want to be stuck in the car for like 8 hours. And it's like, well,
Well, then
what
don't.
else are you gonna do? How else are you gonna get there? We can't teleport.
Right. Well, like I was saying, well, then don't go.
Yeah, if you don't want to deal with either thing, then don't go. But I really want to go. Then you got two
You go.
choices.
Either drive or you get on a plane. Those are your only two choices. You want to walk to Vegas?
Or get a friend to drive for you, and you can just pass
Spend
out.
gas money, yeah.
Yeah.
So working backwards, like instead of doing what is outlined here, which is what actually a lot of people do, and when I was most depressed in my life is what I did. And I think you did.
Uh-huh.
Although I still think you were better at not than I was, but anyhow. Um, Working backwards, like Epictetus is kind of reminding us that how we look at things is what makes the biggest difference. And so this is where Stoicism often gets accused of being passive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saying like the goal of an education, and when he's using education, he's basically using it as a technical term. Those who choose to take up the philosophy of Stoicism, right?
Yeah.
The goal of that is to be able to train your mind to want things that are under your control.
Yeah.
So your effort, what you put into things, how you look at life, the kinds of thoughts you produce, and the actions that result from those things are under your control.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of doing those things, he's like, oh, train your mind to want things to happen just as they are, and in other places in the discourses, to want things that are in your sphere of choice.
Yeah.
And so this is where Stoicism gets accused of being passive, but then the counterpoint to that is the archer example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the archer does everything possible to prepare a shot to be as accurate as it possibly can be. But
Yeah.
ultimately, you can't control things like wind resistance. You can't actually control whether or not your arrow hits the bullseye.
Yeah.
You can do everything up to that point, but once the arrow is loosed, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only thing you control, is what happens before you release it. And Epictetus is constantly reminding people in passages like this one that that's all you can do. So he's not saying don't do anything, just accept things as they are. He's saying do what you can, but understand that that has limits.
Yeah.
And I think that's ridiculously important to remember.
Yeah, he could have been a Zen archer.
Yeah. In fact, there is a similar example in Zen.
Yep, that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, I know. That's why I had to say it for other people.
Yeah.
Because I know you know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to attempt to read like a person who can't read. What is the fruit of these Stoic doctrines? The very thing that has to be the finest and most fitting outcome for people who are getting a real education: tranquility, fearlessness, and freedom. For on these matters, we should not trust many people who say education is only available to the free, but rather the philosophers who say that only the educated are free. What do you mean by this? I don't know, Mr. Rogers. Let's find out. Well, ask yourself about freedom in this time of ours. Doesn't it consist simply in the power to live as you wish? Absolutely. Tell me then, you people, do you wish to live in error? Of course we don't. That's right. No one is free who is in error. Do you wish to live in fear and sorrow and disturbance? Certainly not. So one who is fearful or sorrowful, I can't pronounce those words today. Fearful or sorrowful or disturbed is free, but the person who is wait.
He said no one who is fearful.
So okay, yeah. So no one who is fearful, sorrowful, or disturbed is free, but the person who is relieved of sorrows and fears and disturbances is relieved of enslavement by the very same process. Wow, it seems like A.A. Long chose passages to directly support the first.
Yeah.
At least so far. Because this is reinforcing what I was saying earlier. So, Epictetus, a lot like the Buddhists, think that, judgment is what colors our minds and creates strong emotions, right?
Yeah.
They're not saying emotions shouldn't exist, they're acknowledging that they do. And when you focus those things on what is in your power, you have a greater degree of potential for equanimity than if you take your own judgments as though they're fact. One of the ways that I have learned to kind of get around the harsh judgments of my upbringing, because I was taught to judge harshly despite growing up super religious, but for a lot of people, the two things go hand in hand. When I find myself having a strong emotional reaction to something someone says rather than making a statement, I do my best to ask a question.
Yeah.
Not a leading question that implies that I've already made up my mind, but an actual question. Let's come up with a stupid example. Let's say I really like Doom. Somebody tells me Doom is crap.
Yeah.
And Quake is better, which is true, but let's say I disagree. Right?
Mhm.
I mean, Doom's not crap, but Quake is just better. But instead of being like, well, why do you think it's better than Doom? Right? Because that implies that I probably like Doom better.
Yeah.
I'll ask, oh, what do you like about Quake? Because it might be that they don't necessarily think Doom is crap. They just really think Quake is better.
Right.
Because it has a different ambiance. It has OpenGL support, which it was one of the first games to do that. It has different weapons. It's got moody lighting.
Yeah.
And all sorts of things. So instead of making pronouncements, just ask more questions.
Mhm.
Particularly in this politically impatient time of ours, I find that questions are far more productive. And if people insist on engaging in personal attacks, just walk away from the discussion completely.
Yeah.
There's no need to put up with things like that at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do you think that was a good addition?
Yeah.
All right. Your turn.
Do you think freedom is something great and noble and valuable? Of course. Is it possible to be submissive if you obtain such a great and valuable and noble thing? It is not. So whenever you see someone groveling to another person or flattering him insincerely, you can confidently say that this man also is not free, and not only if he is doing it for the sake of a meager meal, but even if he is hoping for a governorship or a consulship. Call people who act like this for small things petty slaves, and call the others as they deserve, slaves on the grand scale. You are right again. Do you think freedom is something in one's own power and self-determined? Of course. You can confidently say then that no man is free if someone else has the power to obstruct and compel him. And don't consider his family tree or investigate whether he was ever bought or sold. But if you hear him say, yes, sir, within himself and the feeling, call him a slave, even if he is preceded by a consular retinue. And if you hear him say, poor me, what things I suffer, call him a slave. In short, if you see him wailing, complaining, and unhappy, call him a slave in official dress. If, however, it's none of these things, don't call him free yet, but examine his judgments to see whether they are in any way subject to compulsion, or obstruction, or unhappiness. And if you find him to be of that sort, call him a slave on vacation at the Saturnalia, and say that his master is away. Soon he will come back, and then you will learn the nature of this man's sufferings. Who will come back? Everyone who has authority over anything that the man wants, either to get it for him or to take it away from him. Do we have so many masters then? Oh yes, prior to people we have masters in the form of circumstances, and there are lots of those. For this reason then, everyone with authority over any of our circumstances is bound to be our master. Caesar himself, you see, is not what people fear. They fear death, exile, confiscation of property, prison, loss of citizenship. In the same way, no one loves Caesar himself unless he happens to be an outstanding person. What we love are wealth and high position in government or military service. Whenever these are the things that we love and hate and fear, it must be the case that those who have authority over them are our masters.
You have anything you want to say about this? Because I've talked about the last two ones, so I want to make sure you get a chance to,
Yeah, there's not much I feel like I can add because this is pretty self-explanatory.
So,
To be honest, like, I found things like promotions and all that arrive when you least expect them.
so like, I mean, we got to be careful, right? Because it's self-explanatory to you and I.
Yeah,
But I've run across a lot of people that this wouldn't really be all that self-explanatory to.
no, I've encountered them too.
Yeah. So like back in the ancient world, if you could get some government job or you were a decorated war hero, that was what gave you status. So like we live in a world of status, but the forms of status have changed, right?
Right.
So celebrity culture has been a thing for a long time, but now celebrity culture extends to the vast world of like social media and potential six-figure incomes, which have been a thing far longer than social media.
Yeah.
And so basically, like Epictetus is saying that if you're chasing those things, then you'll always be enslaved by those who hold those things in their control. If that's what you center your life around, you're asking to be chained to wanting those.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, like he's saying that, I mean, on the outside, someone can seem like really like, dude, how many people? I mean, I've met quite a few people who have jobs that I wish I had at one point or another, and I'm like, dude, they have like what I wish I had.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they're as happy as I think they are.
Yeah.
But almost equally as often, they have these great jobs and are supremely unhappy either because they don't get enough time with their kids and family, or they've sort of scaled their spending habits to stay proportionate to the amount of money they make, so they don't really have money
Yeah, pretty much.
to save for important things, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, because they just have the basic necessities taken care of, but nothing for themselves or
Right.
what they want.
They assume they can just spend the rest of it like they've always done.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people in that position at various levels of what we would call income brackets. I mean, it happens all over. And that's why Epictetus is saying, instead of looking at, I guess, outside appearances, understand that if they're, chasing external things that are controlled by other people, then another way to look at it is that they're just being led along by those things, and instead examine how that person judges, how they apply judgment to various situations, and then that will tell you basically the degree to which they're constrained by those things or not.
Yeah.
I think I got that right.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I have a feeling this is about to say the same thing I just said. All right, go.
Am I reading all of these?
Or was it my? It's my turn, huh? My bad. Is it possible for someone who desires any of these things that are up to others to be unimpeded? It is not. Is it possible for them to be unconstrained? It is not. Therefore, they cannot be free either. So think. Do we have nothing that is exclusively up to us, or is everything is everything like that, or are some things up to us and some things up to others? How do you mean? And you'd be surprised how many different versions of these exact questions I've seen in conversation, both online and in person. So if this seems really simple, trust me, people get tripped up all the time. When you want your body to be completely sound, it is up to you.
Is it up to you?
Is it up to you, or is it not? My bad. Yeah, I tend to do that. It is not up to me. And when you want it to be in good health, not that either. When you want it to be handsome, no, again. When you want to live or die, not that either. And therefore, your body is not your own property. It is dependent on everything stronger than itself. Granted. And is it up to you to have land whenever you want, for as long as you want, and in the condition that you want? It is not. And likewise in the case of slaves, clothes, and horses. None of these either. And if more than anything you want your children to stay alive, or your wife, or your brother, or your friends, are these things just up to you? They are not. Have you then nothing that is self-determined and that is up to yourself exclusively? Or do you have such a thing? I don't know. Well, look at this and think about it. Can anyone make you assent to something untrue? No one can. Therefore, in the domain of assent, you are unimpeded and unconstrained. Granted. Let's continue. Can someone compel you to have a motivation for something you don't want? They can whenever they threaten me with death or with fetters. They compel me to have such a motivation. Suppose, though, that you disdain dying and being fettered. Are you still going to pay attention to them? I'm not. Is disdaining death your own function, or does it not belong to you? It is mine. So being motivated is also your own... Wait, what?
No, go ahead.
So being motivated is also your own function, or is it not? I grant that it is. And repulsion from something, that is also yours. What if I am motivated to take a walk and another person impedes me? What part of you do they impede? Shit, hold on. No, but my poor body. Yes, as they would impede a stone. Let that be so, but the fact that I don't continue with my walk. And who told you it is your function to walk unimpeded? What I have been telling you is that the only unimpeded thing is the motivation. Wherever there is a need for the body and the body's cooperation, you have heard long ago that none of it is your own. I grant this as well. Can anyone compel you to desire something you don't want? No one can. Can anyone exert compulsion over your intentions, your projects, or to speak quite generally, can anyone manipulate you, manipulate the way you deal with the impressions you experience? Not that either, but when I do desire something, They will stop me from getting what I desire. But how will they stop you if you desire one of the things that are your own and not liable to impediment in no way at all? So who is telling you that you can be free from impediment if you desire things that are not your own? Am I not to desire good health then? Certainly not. And nothing else that is not your own. Because nothing is your own that is not up to you to procure or to secure whenever you want. Keep your hands right off it. But first and foremost, keep your desire well away. Otherwise, you are giving yourself up to slavery and submitting your neck to the yoke. If ever you admire what is not your own or feel strongly for things that are dependent on others and are perishable, isn't my hand my own? It is a part of you, but by nature it is clay, subject to impediment and compulsion, a slave to everything that is stronger. Why do I mention your hand to you? You should treat your entire body like a little overloaded donkey, just as long as that is possible and allowed to you. But if you were pressed into public service and a soldier seizes it, let it go and don't resist or grumble. If you do, you will get a beating and lose your little donkey just the same. Since this is the attitude you need to have with the body, consider what you need to do about the rest of the things one gets for the sake of the body. Since the body is a little donkey, everything else comes with becomes bridles, saddles, shoes, barley, and hay for the donkey. Let them go too. Dismiss them more quickly and more easily than the donkey itself. So this is particularly hard for people in this culture.
Yep.
You want to talk about that?
I see it way too often.
So why don't you?
Yeah, but hold on. Well, the body is a pretty good example, like this discourse brought up, because as much as we are advanced in nutrition info and all that stuff, there's still a lot we don't understand when it comes to the human genome and genetics and all that. So like stuff like diabetes and all that we know a lot about, and we can prevent it, but ultimately that stuff is not really directly under our control. So the things that we can do, especially today, is inform ourselves on nutrition. Even now we have the ability to like analyze our genome so that, you know,
we can make better informed choices about what we do with this thing.
Yeah, but as nice as all that is, like, we don't have like a God control on our body. Like, we can't control when we go to the restroom or whatever. I mean, people try. I've seen it.
Dude, me too.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to do it too, but eventually you have to give in because that's just the natural way of your body.
So one of the things that, like, the way that we think in our culture, we tend to apply certain ideas a little too broadly. So one example of a place where, this gets muddied is the rhetoric behind my body, my choice, which is intended to like advocate a certain degree of freedom of choice when it comes to who you're with, how you're behaved towards, like people respecting your boundaries
Yeah.
as a person, and all that sort of thing. But just like the hypothetical person in this passage, we sort of assume that that means we, like, there's an unwritten assumption in our minds that we have total control over our bodies. But you can take really good care of your body and then be born with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah, that's something you can't even control.
You can still get arthritis no matter how fit you are. I've met really fit people who have like really bad joints.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because of the degree to which they work out,
Mm-hmm.
but not always. We can control what we eat to a certain extent if we have the means, but we can't control how our body's going to respond to that.
Yeah.
I had zero control over whether or not I was born with CP.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's really useful to think of the body as if it were, you know, an overburdened little donkey.
Yeah.
As Epictetus puts it. I actually kind of like that. It made me laugh.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like I said, you know, that rhetoric is useful because it's intended to apply to a specific set of things. But when you apply that where it doesn't belong, like how your body deals with age, how your body deals with certain food input, whether or not you're genetically predisposed to certain conditions, and whether or not those genes are active.
Yeah.
Like, we have no control over that at all. I mean, there are certain scientists that think you can, but first of all, I don't know if that's true, and I don't necessarily know if I want it to be exercised, even if it could be.
Yeah, see, we're in an interesting age because, for one, these self-determined philosophies were never really that popular with our species on a larger scale.
Oh yeah, even during its time period, neither.
Yeah, like as a species, we've always wanted to become the masters of the earth and each other, which is weird when you think about it.
It's super weird.
Yeah, but we're at an interesting time to where I'm not saying we have direct control over things like genes and all that, but we have technology which allows us to determine if we want a child or not, like, you know, genetic counseling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, if my child's gonna have like a higher chance of Down syndrome, like they have that choice not to even have it because they have that information now.
Right, and then if you have enough money, there are some technologies that might enable you to completely erase that possibility.
Yeah, so then it also opens up, like it also makes it transparent how deeply entrenched certain stigmas and biases are in people.
Yeah.
Because of this technology.
So for me, right, like,
yeah,
watching my mom like try to figure out how to raise me, which, by the way, I was not an easy kid to raise. Not just like I was born with cerebral palsy, but that wasn't why. I'm also a smartass. I was also told I was really intelligent way too early in life, and that did not do good things for my attitude. And like because of that, I was kind of a pain in the ass. But watching what my mom went through, if I were to have a kid with Downs or something like that, my attitude is, well, I better learn what Downs is, and I better learn what to expect.
Yeah.
That is my attitude. My attitude isn't, well, I better save up enough money for some gene editing tech. Oh, no, dude, I'm going to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to learn because it's my personal point of view that experience is what will make me a better person than I am, like a lot of the more difficult experiences in life tend to do when you learn to look at them in productive ways.
Yeah.
There are some things that are just completely out of your control and are unhelpful.
Mm-hmm.
But there are things that you can learn after the fact that enable you to help both yourself and others.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um. Yeah. It's
no,
just I'm always at a crossroads sometimes when I think about because you and I both like sci-fi and speculative fiction and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, the ideas are really fascinating to me, and to live in a future where we have that type of stuff, um, it's strange because on the one hand, the creative self of of my brain is fascinated for it and would even want it, but on a practical level, we're not even close to the sci-fi ideals like nanomachines and all that stuff. Basically, like human cloning and all that. Like that's stuff I'm fascinated by. But on a practical level, that stuff is still kind of far fetched. So, like, my actual attitude is like, well, you made these decisions, you decided to have a child, like, with this person at this age, because also age affects things
yeah,
like autism and Downs and all that.
yeah. So
So, I
the
mean, those decisions are your own, and you got to accept like, because I'm starting to meet people who end up having children like past their 30s, which
oh,
increases those chances. So, like, I feel as though genetic counseling is just an expensive, easy way out for those people who never really considered, oh, maybe I should have a child early or something like that.
right, and
But
like
yeah, but then again, it could still happen. It's just the percentages are different.
so you're playing a game of roulette,
Yeah,
basically, right? Like let's just be real. Whenever you make any decision, this is the thing that Epictetus is driving at. Whenever you make any kind of decision in life, you have to understand that once that decision is made, um, you have to accept the consequences, whether they're good or bad.
yeah,
Like, whether you think certain consequences are you go like, yeah, this is amazing, or like certain aspects of it are bad, or vice versa. Like that's up to you, and you have to accept it for what it is, because like that's not something you can change. Like deciding, like I'm not judging people who have children later in life, right?
yeah. That's not the issue here.
And I'm not judging people who have children early in life. Like it is what it is. Like just be the best parent you can be, whatever your circumstances.
Yeah,
But if knowing what you know, like if you can afford genetic counseling and you realize that you're at high risk for all like various genetic conditions or whatever that are very life impacting,
yeah,
and you're not ready to deal with the what the outcome would be having a child with those same genetic predispositions,
yeah,
then don't have a child.
yeah. Like the what matters is the choice.
But if you know that and you still want to have a child. Like, no one is saying one thing is good, the other one is bad. It's dependent on you as a person and what you personally can handle.
Right.
My personal perspective is that if you're not a child rearing type of person, or there are other circumstances in your life that make you think having a child isn't a good idea and you do it anyway because you really want the sexual gratification and you don't like condoms or whatever, and then you're not around to see that child grow, like that's where I personally have an issue.
Yeah.
And
And yeah, there was something else I was going to add to that.
go ahead.
Yeah. Um. Like I noticed, sometimes people will have children just so they can stay on welfare, and I'm not saying that's everyone. Like, in
No,
fact,
it's
it's a
not
very
everyone.
small percentage of people, but I've encountered them, and that attitude is very kind of repulsive to me.
Oh dude, and like I'm not, so we didn't grow up with a lot of money. Like, we were on various kinds of assistance and we needed it.
Right.
Over the course of that, though, I met people firsthand that did have that attitude where they literally would plan by the benefits they were eligible to receive if certain conditions were met, and they would have kids according to that. That was the worst version of that I had ever seen in my life, and it's pretty damn rare.
Yeah.
Most people we met genuinely needed help because of something going on in their life, and eventually, like, they got off of it. So it is a very, very small percentage. Unfortunately, like, percentage versus, like, if you look at raw numbers are always going to look huge.
Yeah.
But it's like less than 2% of people receiving any kind of welfare.
Yeah.
It's stupidly small. Most people that need assistance genuinely need assistance. Don't sit there and look at someone just because they have an EBT card as being lazy and they don't want to work. Most of the time, overwhelmingly, that is not the case.
Yep.
And as having been someone who grew up with that stigma, stop it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not productive. You're not right. You just enjoy the luxury of feeling like you are.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes you a horrible human being. In some cases, it might. But just like the welfare reproduction pipeline myth, like, it's a very small percentage of people that actually think that, in spite of actually meeting people who don't meet that stereotype.
Yeah.
And those people don't need to be friends with me, so it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You want to read one more? Or you want to just do all 9? What do you want to do?
What do you think?
I don't know, because it's been about an hour, so that's why I'm asking you.
Oh, damn. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, that's why I was like, it's up to you.
I'll read number 5 and then we can stop.
All right.
Everything everywhere is perishable and vulnerable. If you get attached to some of them even a little, you are bound to be troubled and discouraged, a prey to anxiety and distress. You will have desires that are unfulfilled and aversions that are fully realized. Are we not willing, therefore, to secure the only safety that has been granted to us, to give up the perishable and slavish things and work on those that are imperishable and naturally free? Don't we recall that no one does injury or benefit to another, but that the cause of each of these things is a judgment? This is what does harm and wreckage. It is this that is battle, this that is strife, and this that is war. What made Epictetus and Polynices the mortal foes that they were was simply this: their judgment concerning kingship and their judgment concerning exile. They judged the latter to be the worst of bad things, and the former to be the greatest of goods. This is everyone's nature, to pursue the good and avoid the bad, and to regard a person who deprives us of the one and inflicts us with the other as an enemy and a schemer, even if he is a brother or a son or a father, for nothing is more closely related to us than the good. So if these things are good and bad, no father is dear to his sons, and no brother is dear to his brother, but everything is full of enemies, plotters, and informers. But if the right will is the only good thing, and the wrong will the only bad thing, what place is left for battle? What place for abuse? About things that are nothing to us? Against whom? Against the ignorant, against the unfortunate, against people who have been deceived about what matters most.
Man, that's pretty good.
Yeah, because he's right about our nature as humans is we pursue things that we think are good. We don't ever pursue things that we think are horrible for us. But then, like, that's only in our heads. So then he's basically warning against, like he said with the two characters, they both thought to take the throne was the good. Like, they felt they would get something out of it that they don't already have. And they regard exile as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that ties to like, being liked by people or being respected by people, I should say. Like not necessarily liked.
See, so when we think of kings in the modern world, we think of people that have like lots of financial assets as well as people who have a lot of power. And it still holds true that people with a lot of financial assets tend to have a lot of social sway.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like, there's a sociological study that was done a while back, but it still holds relatively true that there's a certain degree to which having more money increases overall feelings of well-being if applied smartly, right?
Yeah.
Um, and beyond that point, you start to see diminishing returns. And the study says that the median income of like 60,000, um, beyond that, you don't see very much increase in happiness. So what that didn't do was like calculate median incomes for like large families or whatever. So I assume it scales. But the point of the study is that beyond a certain point, like beyond the point where all your basic needs are met and you have a decent sized entertainment budget slash disposable income to do things that you actually enjoy, you don't get um, a greater feeling of happiness from having more shit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Like, what are we chasing if the only thing we're chasing is financial security?
Right.
I don't know very many people in this circumstance. I don't know very many rich people, but I knew a dude with a sizable income who refused to give any of it to their family after they passed. Like, it literally went nowhere. It was not donated to a charity. It wasn't distributed among family. It wasn't. It what nothing was done with it. It literally just went nowhere because that person refused to give it up.
Yeah, and that's an example of like that person's gone and therefore the value of that thing is gone as well.
Exactly.
It left with that person.
Yeah, and so like, there's another thing in Stoicism that we've talked about that I think is important to bring up. Like, it's not that external things are bad,
No.
right? It's that often whether or not we get those things isn't entirely up to us. So we should focus more on how we can affect the situation and what is actually in our control versus what isn't, because it enables us to act in a way that maintains a certain degree of presence of mind.
Yeah, they called that like preferable indifference versus
Preferred indifference, yeah, versus
preferred.
dispreferred.
So yeah, wealth is I would say like having, let's go with the sociological study, like having enough wealth, that's preferable versus, but
It's not up to you whether or not that happens 100%.
yeah, it doesn't have an effect on your character unless you excessively desire it
Yeah.
to the exclusion of bettering yourself and all that.
And so, like, some of the discourses actually had a character that would argue against Epictetus is like, well, isn't it better if I have money or health or whatever? Because this, and then, like, and they bring up all these hypotheticals, and he's like, yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
But if having a bunch of money makes you a crappy person toward other people, then it would be better that you did not have it.
Yeah.
Right? So he's not saying these things are bad in and of themselves. It's about what you do with them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have money, it's about what you do with your money that makes the difference. It's what makes it good or bad. Like, I mean, to use a gross example, right? Like, if you have a lot of money, but you're involved in trafficking illegal things that spread suffering throughout the world, then is having money good? No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's not the money that's bad. It's what you've chosen to do with it and probably where you got it.
Yeah, and also like like with your example of the recent person passing, like that person kept all of that to themselves, which isn't good either.
Yeah, and the specific person I'm thinking of actually did not live in very good conditions because they refused to spend money.
Yeah, see that the ways to misuse money are various.
And this person had more than $2 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading it was somewhere north of $2 million. It was like $2.5 million, something like that. And the house was completely in disrepair, and like there was so many things wrong with those living conditions, and you wouldn't think that someone that had that much money would want to live like that, but they just didn't want to let go of the money. It's like the stereotypical Tolkien's dragon, right? Like,
Yeah, hoarder, except a hoarder of money.
yeah. So
It's a hoarder mentality. Just like you see on that show Hoarders, I think it's called.
dude, that show scares me.
Same here. Well, it's completely off topic, but I was like, was he a hoarder, like in terms of physical things?
Kind of.
Okay, well then, yeah, the psychological consequences are the same. Like hoarding, quote unquote, treasure like a dragon is not good for your mental health.
Yeah, to be honest, I kind of feel like I over hoarded on the video games, but we'll figure that out. But I mean, yeah.
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 So, yeah.
So we will finish the selections from the discourses some point next week, either on a Saturday or Sunday, because like your schedule kind of alternates.
Yeah.
Also, too, you might get promoted, depending.
Yeah, depending. We'll find out.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So tentatively, congratulations. If it doesn't happen, well then, oh well. All right, dudes. We'll talk to you later.
Yep. See you later.
Have a philosophical day.
Yep.
I don't even know what that means. All right.
All right.